Hello, and thank you for joining this week's episode of You Can Call Me Karen. Before we get started, we wanted to share a quick trigger warning. We will be covering topics that may be difficult for some listeners this week, including suicide, sexual assault, and abuse. So for those that may have a harder time listening to this, you may want to skip this week, or certainly fast forward as we get into some of the more difficult topics. And for the rest of our listeners, thank you for diving in, and here we go.
Little box and the green one. Little box and the blue one. Blue box and the yellow one and the little and the box and the green one.
A post on Reddit asked, "Does anyone think that the Cosby show will ever come back on air?" We all know what a predator Cosby is, but he wasn't the only person on the show. Is canceling the entire series from syndication the only way to show disapproval of Bill Cosby's alleged actions? If you still long for catching reruns, does that mean you support what Cosby allegedly did? Welcome to the You Can Call Me Karen podcast.
Box. Little box.
Hey, hey, hey. I don't know. That's what came out. Oh, hey, hey, hey. Whoa.
Oh,
Listen, okay, because I'm on fire
That was
today.
dang it. Right.
Let's go. Hi, everybody. This is Steph, and you are joining us for the You Can Call Me Karen podcast. I'm joined by my lovely, amazing, wonderful co-hosts, Manni.
Hello. Hey, hey, hey.
You did that really well.
It was so good. And the shoulder movement, it was impressive.
And of course, we have Karen.
I've got nothing. I can't follow that. Here I am.
Well, welcome, everyone. So today we are going to be continuing our conversation about cancel culture. Last week we discussed the cancellation, quote unquote, of businesses and organizations, and we provided some historical context. But this week we will be more focused on individuals who have fallen from grace. But before we dig into today's topic, let's hear from Manni and Karen with, who are you calling Karen?
Who are you calling, Karen?
Calling Karen.
You're really trying.
Stop trying to make that happen.
I to get us kicked off.
Yes, Karen, let's go.
Okay. I was pondering this in my cab ride home last night because I find myself often like wanting to be more of a Karen. So
Ow.
stick with me for a second. But so like I have always been a people pleaser, and so like I don't like conflict, and I don't like making situations uncomfortable. And so I was thinking about it in the cab yesterday. So I was coming home from the airport. I had just flown back from London, and so I was very sleep deprived. And I like got in the cab, and the driver was like wanting to chat, like he clearly knew he picked me up from the international terminal. And so he was like, "Ooh, where are you coming from? Oh, so this must be like midnight for you. Oh, let me ask you a gajillion questions." And I was like, I was being polite. I was responding. And then thankfully he got a call. So he was like chatting with somebody else for a while so I could just zone out. He was driving horribly aggressively to the point where I was like I felt like I was going to puke. And then about halfway through, he threw in some gum and was like mouth noise city. And like
Mouth noise city.
like and I swear, having a kid makes you more tolerant of those noises than maybe you otherwise would be. But
Yeah, very
I
overstimulated, actually.
I was like shaking. I was like, I can't get out of this cab fast enough. And I was sitting there contemplating, like asking him to spit out his gum and not feeling comfortable enough to say that. And thinking about telling this story today, like, this is my Karen battle. And my name is Karen. So I feel like I overcompensate to like not fulfill the stereotype. But I was like trying to jump out of my skin. I was so uncomfortable. I thought I was going to hurl. I can't even articulate how much mouth noise there was. I was like, there's no way you have other people who live in your house, because someone would punch you in the face if they heard. Like the way you smack your lips, it's just gum. Like what happens when you eat food? I can't. Okay, so I didn't Karen. And I didn't even tip poorly, which I'm kicking myself for. But like,
ooh, good point.
But like, I don't, am I allowed to be a Karen in that situation? Like, what am I supposed to do?
Wow.
Help me.
I feel like I saw someone post in their stories about an Uber ride, and she said that the driver was talking to her a lot, and she specifically, I think you can select you'd prefer a quiet ride.
Yeah, you can, but I was in a cab. It was a taxi.
It was a cab.
And also, by the way, Ubers don't always respect that selection.
No, they don't.
Mine always says quiet.
That was her whole point, was like, what is the point of me, indicating I'd like a quiet ride? Because in addition to the chomping and smacking, he was having a phone conversation too. Like that is really overstimulating to me too. Like that's like the ride from hell. Jesus.
Yeah. I realized actually just got back from London. Like, you must be really tired. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. He literally, I didn't even say it. He totally acknowledged that I was sleep deprived. And like, he was like, oh, let me find out everything I need to know about this woman.
Right.
You just came from London. What was the weather like? Do you travel often? Tell me more about yourself. I was like, literally, go fuck yourself. But instead of all of that, I just politely responded and didn't say anything to indicate otherwise.
Here's what I would have done, because I am similar in that I don't like confrontation.
Small talk.
Especially when I don't like small talk, exactly. But especially when I feel like this person has my life in their hands, I just feel like that could go a couple of different ways that are very dark in my mind. So there's like a little bit of a fear of of that. Like in other situations, maybe that might be plausible, but in situations where like the driver has control, I am just like you, right? So I kind of pulled this one year when we were coming back from I was going home from nationals, when I had a flight in the morning really early. I had to leave, and you know how there's not a ton of Ubers around. So like, I thought I was getting an Uber in enough time, but I wasn't. And then the Uber driver was going really slow. So I picked up my phone and I pretended to have a conversation with someone.
Oh my God, yes.
And I was like, I know, like, I hope I make my flight. Like, I'll be,
so smart.
Like, it's going to be cutting it really close. And then next thing you know, that guy is on the gas going super fast. And when we get to the airport, he opens up the trunk and he's like, oh my gosh, ma'am, I really hope you make your flight. Like, good luck to you. And I was like, ah. So
that is genius. Oh, wow.
So I would have put a conversation like, I'm so tired. I think I'm going to take a nap in this Uber on the taxi ride so that I can get some rest before my big meeting tomorrow. A little white.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I picture me doing that, and as I'm on the pretend phone, my phone rings. Because that's exactly what would happen to me. But I love that. That's brilliant. I'm going to use that for sure.
Very good.
Thank you for the guidance.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
So that's my not Karen for the week, my
Your
interturmoil Karen.
Potential Karen.
Manni, who are you calling Karen this week?
Okay, so I kind of alluded to this in our dance team group chat. I was going to call this person the Karen for the week. So we are recording this podcast on January 12th. Recently, about 2 or 3 days ago, it came out that Allison, am I saying her last name right?
Holker.
Holker, who was married to Stephen Boss Twitch, who died a couple of years ago. She has come out with a somewhat of a tell-all book, I guess, about Twitch and the aftermath of what she has gone through since discovering that he had some, let's just call them allegedly demons in the closet. And she has received, it's interesting that we're talking about this on the
cancel
culture episode. She has received a bunch of vitriol, not only from people in the dance community, but specifically from Twitch's family, who we are finding out had to sign an NDA to even attend his funeral, which is what she said was to protect his legacy, which brings me to why she would be the Karen for the week, because she claimed that she was doing all this to protect his legacy. When we first found out that he died by suicide, she claimed that she had no idea of the struggles that he was going through, and there were no signs. And it seems like some of that is changing in her language now. And also she's profiting off of this book. So I question, not necessarily, we don't have to get into the truth of it all, because I'm not sure we'll ever find out any of that. But my reason why I think she is a Karen is, as somebody who writes in a journal a lot, one of the pieces of information that has been circulating in the news is that she found one of Twitch's or several of Twitch's journals in their closet. And that is the information that she uses in her book. So that's into you guys of like, what is a partner's, what is an appropriate response as a partner when you have somebody who has passed on and you find some of their personal stuff? I know for me, I think we'll talk about the afterlife sometime in this season later on. But
will we?
we'll talk about like spirituality and I think that if you ever find any of my journals and tell anybody about it, that is a great way for me to haunt you for the rest of your motherfucking life.
I haven't read all of the articles. I know we were sharing them, but admittedly, I was just distracted and I didn't get a chance to read them. And you guys know, for whatever reason, Twitch's suicide like really rocked me when it happened, and still like it's really hard for me to even contemplate. But but that said, I didn't realize that she was using his journals allegedly, right? I guess we can speculate whether
that's not alleged. She did use a snippet from his journal to explain
like his mental state.
Yeah, to explain his mental state.
But so I guess where my head went immediately when you said that, Manni, is that I'm going to say it's different because they are in the public eye, and that I'm not saying it's right or wrong because I just am processing this information right now. But I do think because they're in the public eye, there is so many more people that would be interested to understand why it happened, right? Like suicide is just one of those things that I think we all yearn for answers on and never get them. And so there's a part of me that understands, like, if she's writing a memoir, which like her profiting off of this circumstance is certainly questionable. But if she's doing that, the thought that may be going through her mind is, I can't speak on behalf of him. So if I have his words to explain, how he was feeling, then maybe that answers some questions for people. I don't know. It's like if it was like one of us, as dark as that is, I don't think I would want Bob publishing my journal, but I don't know that I would mind if he shared with you all, for example, where I was at mentally and what I was struggling with. Because it's, my friends and my family.
Well, I think
So
that's the point, is that she didn't
in a
share
book.
with his friends and his
no,
family.
she didn't at all. She just went
No,
straight to the book.
there's no relationship.
Or that she, like, even if she did share with his friends and family, she should I think that makes sense if she was only sharing it with his friends and family.
Yeah.
But she's putting it in a book for all the world to see.
Yeah.
And for us, people who don't know him personally, his legacy is like, when I think of Twitch, I think of his smile, I think of his talent, I think of his warmth, I think of his, and I was fully able to just accept that I don't know what caused him to commit suicide, but I will forever hold him the way I envision him. And what she has done has tarnished and darkened and made me like start to think about things that I was not going to let myself think about. I'm just going to, especially us, like in the dance community. Like I saw an article that was talking, actually it was in Essence. It was Essence magazine posted after Allison Holker's cover came out, and their quote was like delicious.
Yes.
But it basically was something like, he was ours, like especially part of the Black community. And I feel like that as a Black person, as a Black woman, he was ours before he was everyone's. Like I don't think of him as the guy from Ellen. And when I say he was ours, I think of him as he was ours in the dance community first. He was a dancer, period.
Yeah.
And so we love him, and I don't need to know anything beyond that. Like and so she needs to grapple with what has happened. His family needs to grapple with what had happened. I don't think that we, outside of his bubble, need to grapple with what has happened.
Right.
We celebrate him. We carry on his legacy. We continue to lead with kindness and joy that he did, and that's it. End of story. Don't put it in a book. Can of the week.
I love that. Two things popped up when you were talking about that, and that's one, mental health in the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated.
It is complicated.
And her inability to be able to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's the undertone from the family and the Black community, especially, of like, well, wait. And it's like I saw in one of the comments of like the fetishing of Black men without really knowing the community, right? And so there's one layer of that, which you were talking about, Steph. And then two, to Karen's point, and I think we'll get into this today when we talk about celebrity, right? It's like, well, just what is the humanity of a celebrity, right? The responsibility of a celebrity to inform me about anything, whether it be something as dark and awful as committing suicide, or something as simple as my skincare routine, like the level of I don't even know, that the authority, I guess, that we give to celebrity. I feel like we're seeing that kind of change right now in the conversations around, like, like we had last week of like influencers versus journalists, like, I don't know. I feel like that hierarchy is somewhat like crumbling. And so I think part of this conversation is like, it to your point, Steph, like my relationship to this person was him being in the dance community. And I just wanted to be able to to savor it as that.
Savor it, yeah.
I feel like I'm in this private conversation that I shouldn't be a part of. And
yes, private conversation that we shouldn't be a part of. Yes.
so,
So I do feel like, because I follow Allison Holker on Instagram, and she did do a post in response to all of the negative. And so she said that her intention was to shed light on mental health. She said that she missed signs. And so her intention was to share from her perspective, because she doesn't want anyone else to have to go through what she went through. And so on the flip side, her being in celebrity, I know we're saying what responsibility does she have, but she felt a responsibility to share, these are things that I missed. And that was really truly her intention. And she also said that she plans to make sure the proceeds from the book go towards NAMI and other mental health organizations, and she does not plan to profit off of the book. So I feel like if we're being responsible and discussing it as podcasters, she did say that, but and maybe this is all true, and that's what she's saying. I still disagree with her including something so personal in the book, but
because there's also, and I know we have to wrap and move on, but there's also the marketing and promotion that goes into all of that, right? Like, so to use People magazine to be the source, that's where people are like, yes, but like,
it is really, I think it is really complex, because I can see both sides, and like to your points, both of your points on like mental health in the Black community specifically. I think part of the, I guess, challenge is the stigma around mental health. And so if we can say these things out loud and help people to, be more open about the challenges that they're having, or get access to mental health care, maybe we can start to break down some of that stigma so people can actually get help. I don't know. I can see both sides. I don't love the capitalistic and like Karen-y undertones. I don't.
Headline,
and part of Black mental health is white supremacy,
One of the comments was on the People magazine post, was the headline was like, he was hiding so much, and someone was like, so let him hide, like why, let it like, why do we need to know then? End the story.
It's not by that statement I didn't mean like let all of his shit
business out, right?
But more of like that even the people that seem the most happy are dealing with shit, and it's okay to
say
not
so.
Be okay.
It's okay to not be okay.
I don't know. It's a messy one, but
that was a good one.
That's okay. It's I like that there's ambiguity here, and that's Karen's for the week.
That's Karen's for the week. All right, so today we are going to be digging into more into cancel culture, and we got to start with the Cosby Show, which was a staple of my childhood. I know there wasn't a whole lot I was allowed to watch on TV, so I could watch TGIF and the Cosby Show, and my bedtime was at 8:30.
Oh my gosh, we had the same childhood.
Yeah, we had the same childhood. So it's pretty just devastating that America's Dad, Bill Cosby, Cliff Huxtable, is canceled. But it's rightfully so. The list of alleged, I have to say alleged, I'm assuming, so I'm going to say alleged sexual assault victims is terrifyingly long. But what happens to our memories of a show that left a lasting impression on our childhoods? So like, what happens to how I think back to watching that show and the positive influence that it had? We are heading into finding out more about Diddy, which might take out some other musicians we millennials love, and I will be gutted if you start taking down some of these people. And don't get me started on Michael Jackson. Honestly, you don't want to get me started on Michael Jackson. Am I right? Manni and Karen, because I could go on and on. So basically, there's this list of celebrities who have had influence on our lives, and they have fallen from grace, made terrible decisions and choices and actions. And now, like, you can't find Cosby Show anywhere. And I used to be able to catch it on multiple television stations anytime during the day. So I found an article that I'm going to be referencing a lot throughout the discussion, and the title of the article is Cancel Culture Effective? So I want to start with this quote from the article. It's a really good article. It was on University of Central Florida website.edu, so it looks like it was researched. But it says, the instant nature of social media means that very large, complicated social issues get condensed into one sentence, a 1 minute for TikTok videos, or just a photo on Instagram. Kuhn says, everything is becoming very succinct. It both discourages nuanced discussion and encourages all or nothing stances. Cancel culture is you're all good or you're all bad. And human nature is much more complicated than that. That's the end of the quote. I like that quote because, first of all, it ties to our previous discussion of the media being the fourth branch of government. And that's how these one-liners and these 1 minute videos have become how many people get their quote unquote news and information. So these like one-liners is how we decide who we should be voting for and who we should, right? So I love that quote for that. Do I need to pause?
It's terrifying.
Yeah, that was like my moment of sadness on the episode today.
But I also like the quote because I think it's a good lead into our discussion, because it calls out the fact that with all these one-liners and these headlines and these, videos and stuff, we have gotten rid of nuanced discussion, and it's just less likely to happen when we're talking about people's choices and whether we should quote unquote cancel them. I do have kind of a list of discussion questions or guiding questions to our conversation. I'm going to start with the question that Karen has been itching to address. So question number one I have is, are people ever really canceled?
Boom.
And I do
starting with the biggest question first.
Yeah, I mean, let's get right into it. So I'm going to open up to you, Karen, if you have a response to that.
What Steph is alluding to is, I feel like we've talked about our group chat that kind of spawned this whole thing, and Bob and I, my husband and I, have debated this a lot, because I think he gets irritated with cancel culture in the sense that like, he doesn't think it's fair to cancel someone's entire career based on potentially one bad decision or bad action. And I think eventually we'll talk about justice and, like, in a separate episode, like the idea of justice in this country. I have, my thinking on this has dramatically evolved over the years around like justice and like someone paying for their actions, if you will. And so I totally understand the argument of like, it's so not fair to like put one moment under a microscope and judge someone's entire character for that and potentially ruin their career for that. Now we can have a discussion of like, is that one moment truly just one moment, or is that indicative of another problem? However, my argument with Bob and with the two of you, I think, has always been like, I don't actually think people are really canceled. Like, I think there is, because of social media and the proliferation of information, there is always both sides of the argument. And so even if a certain group of people cancels R. Kelly, I'm going to use as an example, and they've taken him off the radio and they've taken him off like the suggested plays on Spotify and Pandora and stuff. There's this other group of people who are like, no, fuck you. I like this person. or I disagree with the way that this all went down, and they actually like rally around that person. And so I feel like no one's ever, Tucker Carlson is a great example, right? Like he was kicked off Fox News. All these texts came out about the things that he say on TV aren't really the things that he thinks. And then he gets this like web show. I don't really follow him, so I don't really like know the details of it, but like he is fine. He's not canceled. He was canceled from Fox News in the sense that he was fired from his job, and now he is making boku bucks doing basically the same thing for basically a different network. And so like, anyways, I just firmly believe there are very few examples of when somebody is like really, really canceled. And maybe the only one that I could think of that seems to be really canceled was Matt Lauer, which is weird. Because like, yeah, he was a creep, but like all of these people we're talking about were creeps and they are fine except for him. But I haven't researched this. I don't know if Matt Lauer is actually canceled.
I did include an article about Matt Lauer, and he is pretty canceled because he like lives
sorry,
like
Matt.
he lives like a quiet life with his fiance, and he's not in the public eye. And though there's rumblings that people think that he might. I believe Hoda Kotb is leaving the Today Show, and there's people speculating maybe he might come back for that, but it doesn't.
No way.
I know.
Why
right?
would they bring him back?
I don't know. I just saw that in my research for this, but I think he truly is canceled. Do you guys think Bill Cosby's canceled? I feel like he is.
Can I respond to the question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. We skipped over.
So I think I hear Karen's point. And I'll take it to like an opposite end of the spectrum. You guys know that I love reality TV. I love Bravo. And there are a couple of shows. I'm thinking of Vanderpump Rules, one of my favorite, where some of the characters, I think it was around 2020, there was conversations that got leaked about two people. I think it was three people, Jack, Stassi, and Kristen, about their like text messages or their way that they treated a Black woman who used to be on the show. And Bravo during that moment told these three characters that they could not come back onto Vanderpump Rules. And people supported that. Again, it was right at the height of George Floyd movement and COVID and all that stuff. I want to say last year, two of those people got another show on Bravo TV, a spinoff of Vanderpump Rules called The Valley. And so there was grumblings of like, are we supposed to just forget like that this is what
they were like, give it a few years and you'll be fine.
Yeah. So like I see your point in like Hollywood and the media. And I think I listened to a clip last night, and if I can remember it and link it into our show notes, I will. But basically what the guy was saying, and the essence of what he was saying, is that this is about more time. So in the moment, it might seem like these people are not canceled. However, it is small mini revolutions that are happening right now. So in the case of R. Kelly, right, there is going to be a generation that never listens to his music because we are starting that process of filtering him out of our consciousness because we believe as a society that what he did to little girls was wrong. And so if the larger, more
grown women,
powerful organizations are going to continue to do his music or play his music, you're not going to find R. Kelly playing at like my vow renewal or any time in my house, right? So there's going to be a generation of kiddos who grow up being like, who? Because his music isn't going to transcend time. Same with the Me Too movement, right? Same with what we're seeing, although, we can say arguably that like the conservatives are trying to pull that out, the DEI stuff, right? There's these many revolutions that are currently happening and taking hold, and it is going to take time for those to really pick up momentum and for us to actually see cause and effect. And that's why we study history, right? It's not like all those things that we studied in high school history class happened over the course of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, even 10 years. We're talking about 20, 30, 40 years time when we're talking about actual change that was affected into the consciousness of humanity. So I think when we're talking about cancel culture, it's more of a conversation about like, are we talking about like immediacy, or are we talking about like decades? Are we talking about centuries? How are we like defining that?
Here's my like follow up to what you're saying, or it kind of leads me to a question, because you're saying like when you bring up R. Kelly, and we're going to talk about the fact that there's going to be the follow up generation will not be exposed to his music. But so here I have a quote that's like, it says, when you have these forms of public shaming, filming these interactions, it turns social issues into something that is completely individualized. It puts great responsibility on an individual. It does not always encourage actual societal change. We haven't taken care of the larger institutional systemic issues. And so while R. Kelly might be canceled and a generation might not ever hear his music, what he did will continue to happen until we address the actual issue itself.
Steph,
so that goes to like my question my follow-up question is canceling the music and the shows and the individual an effective way of affecting change?
Yes, this is exactly when Manni, when you were talking, that's Steph, you like read my mind, because that is exactly what I was thinking. Like when you're talking about history and that change takes decades, or longer, centuries at times, to actually like take hold. In theory, I agree with that. However, all of these people on this list that admittedly our listeners don't see, but I'm staring at, like Bill Cosby, Matt Lauer, P. Diddy, Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, Michael Jackson. These are all
Put Michael Jackson on that. I'm just kidding.
I'm doing it.
Did you say take him
doing
off?
it.
These are all Michael Jackson on that.
Did you notice that like the bullet pointed list, he wasn't on there?
I know, which is why I intentionally put him back on there.
Like, and I said, please do not get me started. Like, you don't want me to do this.
But hear me out. These are all sexual predators. These are all sexual predators.
Just digressed.
Yeah, we did. But that's okay.
But Karen,
I guess my point is.
Oh no! Did we lose her?
Oh
no! My gosh! I think that she froze out.
No!
What do we do?
Well, that was fun. Lost my connection. I'm going to try to pick up where we left off. So what I was saying is all these people on this list have a common theme, which is sexual predation. And is predation a word?
I don't know. I love the way
like it
off your tongue.
Yeah. I accept.
And because of that, it makes me think about the course of human history. And I'm going to go like way big picture here. But in all of human history, we have themes of like rape and abuse of women and children, I believe. And so, Manni, your point about like, it takes years for things to change. I would love to believe that, over time there are like, there is progress against this, but it still makes me feel like, but they're still doing the same thing and, seemingly getting away with it. And so then like, does this really change anything? I don't know. I'm being a little bit cynical or pessimistic, I feel like, but it does make me feel like So we cancel R. Kelly, but then like, you know, the men in power continue to do whatever they want.
Like
and
that's where I
seemingly
was
get away
going
with
is
it.
also, you know, because, you know, and I don't know if it's my what I'm interested in and all that kind of stuff, but I was really having a hard time like with the fact that my list of people who are on here are a lot of black people. And so I don't know, like, you know, because if we're talking about sexual predators,
Yep.
the president of the United States,
No.
and so I just am like, how do we as a society decide who we cancel? And if, and again, the issue itself still persists. The issue, the occurrence still persists. We still have to address people.
Right.
I think what has changed, or the one positive, is the openness of, you know, like talking about like the from the victim's perspective, like believe her, believe him.
Right. Right.
I feel like conversation has changed, and I think that that's a good thing. And so, because I feel like, you know what comes to mind, like I don't, it's not perfectly related, but you know how like when we were younger we would be like, your, and now, you know, and now we can say like, we can say
Yeah.
period, menstruation, cramps, you know,
Right.
Yeah.
flow, all that stuff. Same thing with, you know, victims being able to say I was raped, abused, whatever.
Yes.
And I do think the conversation has changed and
Right.
for the better. But
Right.
I
In
don't
this
know
country.
in this country, the conversation. I'm not saying like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, and I do appreciate, I think more recently, certainly since we were growing up, the conversation has changed to, instead of making a woman responsible for her own body and saying she was asking for it, we are now saying boys need to be responsible for their body and their action.
Right.
And we shouldn't be putting the weight of the world effectively on women and saying that men can't control themselves. And so therefore it's a woman's responsibility to protect herself.
Right.
I think like that has shifted wildly in
Right.
this country, but we still have this p.diddy shit coming out where Lord knows who all is going to be on that list. I don't follow it very closely, but
I'm not ready.
it's
I'm not
about
ready.
to go down. And Jeffrey Epstein, oh, there's a white guy. There you go. You know, like it's like
committed suicide.
it's right, horrifying to think about the levels that this goes to, which like if it's happening there, where isn't it happening? So we can talk about it in all the right ways, but is behavior actually changing?
Well, I think that goes back to the quote of like, it puts great responsibility on an individual. Right. And that's, I think, is the point of like that these systems only operate and have power because we put faith and belief into these systems. So like, I think that's the point of like not listening to the music, of like canceling our subscriptions. Like, I think that's the point of it, of like, if they can't capitalize off of our participation, then they're forced to change. It is going to take a long time, but because there are so many people who are influenced by it. But I think that like I can't expect the music industry to raise my son, right? Like I'm going to have those conversations in my own household. And so what these clickbaity, but also trendy, and these conversations in social media do is they do name it, because I think that is the problem that we didn't have before is victims, small children, they didn't know how to name these things that were happening to them because they were so normalized. So now we have a vocabulary in our human consciousness where it's like, what happened to you is actually called this. This is what it looks like. These are the signs, and here's how you get support for that, right? And the more that we're able to name the behavior, the more or the less power we give to the perpetrator. And so I think, I don't know, I think that that's, I I think this is all so convoluted because of the systemic and institutional like power that we're giving to some of these industries. But now that we are like, whoa, like R. Kelly should never have been in that music video with Aaliyah, right? Like the next time that we see that, or like even Justin Bieber is one who's been now with all the Diddy stuff. It's like, whoa, like for us, like how we consumed the content was like, oh, that's so cool. Look at this 12-year-old with like, this grown person. And now it's like, what
Whoa.
Yeah.
right? Like, hold up. Actually, I just going back to our conversation last night, I just finished watching Shrinking, and there was a part in the last episode where he's like helping somebody and he's like he's like just perplexed, right? And he's like saying all these things and it's all wrong, right? But they're like in the writing, they're like showing, right? Like how saying those things are like no longer appropriate. Like those things that we used to do and we used to like be funny, like those jokes and things are not, they're actually more harmful. And we name them now and we're aware of them now.
What about though, like not though? That's not though. That's good. I feel that I feel and it does make me like that's kind of like I don't mean to jump ahead, but that would be my aha moment in that like the conversations have changed. We're naming it. We are viewing relationships between adults and young people differently now. So like that was really refreshing to think about. But I can't help but like be a little selfish and think of myself individually as, loving the song Ignition, loving the Cosby Show, when sometimes I catch little clips like people like, a Claire Huxtable like
Oh, when you said
shakedown.
at the beginning, I that had never occurred to me. It's canceling a series.
Yeah.
A whole series when you have some excellent actors and moments, like how did like
Yeah.
what does
I
that
guess
do
that
for
goes back to like the point that Karen was saying about justice, right? Of like
Mhm,
your actions have so much more impact than on just you, right?
mhm,
You do something like this, you jeopardize the future of all the
have
people
people around you.
you work for, who you worked with, who
Mhm,
now their whole reputation is tarnished, as well as the victims and as well as the families of the victims. It has so much more of an effect, right? And this is it.
mhm,
And
That's
so,
the systemic issue, like, of all of it.
mhm.
right,
And,
You know,
like, can you imagine being Bill Cosby's child? Like, to have that name, it used to have so much power, and now you're probably shunned from spaces and opportunities. It's like for
mhm,
something that your parent did. Like,
mhm,
yeah, the ripple effect is massive.
yeah.
mhm.
Steph, you also made me think about this Instagram like GIF or meme or whatever, where it's like, what's something that feels completely illegal but isn't? And like the comment is always like listening to R. Kelly.
It's so true. But
Period.
why don't we feel that way about MJ?
Mm.
I'm just
I feel
saying.
it.
That's
I
not
know.
right. You keep
So,
trying, and then you
I know.
switching out every time you try to bring it up. So that is
yes.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I have
Okay?
a hard time with that one. And
I
Not
think we
yeah.
all do.
Mhm.
not ready. That might be a
Not
different
ready.
episode. We might have to
Like
devote
that's
a whole thing to
a
that.
whole
Okay?
episode
We're already at
to
48
the
minutes, and
king.
I got to get to a basketball game. So
Okay. Well, I do feel like we touched on like the heart of my questions, and I want to turn it over to anyone who has an aha moment or a confessional.
Mm.
I kind of shared mine.
I think the big one in my mind is this idea of, um, the current moment versus like the course of history. And cancel culture has the potential to
Mhm,
impact real meaningful change. And it's not,
mhm,
maybe it's not necessarily about a specific individual in a specific moment, but just the broader themes and the systems that enabled that. I'm feeling very cynical about it today. So I feel like I don't necessarily have the confidence that it will be true, but it does give me a little bit of hope potentially that some of these actions will actually create the opportunity for real change. I guess we'll see.
I think that and not that I'm like all rainbows and butterflies, but I think that is like the point of like, the quote that we just read about individual, like it gives you kind of a sense of purpose, right? Of like, it's not necessarily, maybe it's not I wish that we grew up in the heal the world, Michael.
Oh, what a joke that was. Sorry. In hindsight.
Yeah, you really are cynical. Calm down, okay?
Sorry. I'm sorry.
But that's the point of like that, like we as millennials are like uncovering that was a little bit, there was definitely like a little bit like misconstrued there, right? But maybe our purpose isn't that we get to live in the like, like in this beautiful rainbow world, but we are really experiencing, some of the laws that were put into place to make sure that those hateful things didn't happen, and we're still a generation away from that. So that doesn't stop our purpose from fighting for it, because we want our future generation to grow up living that outcome. And then I think that there's just something that's just going to sit with me. And this is why I love our conversations, is because this to me is a deeper conversation about moral authority. And why do we give our moral authority away when it can be like, I have ownership over that moral authority, right? And so we seek outside of ourselves to tell us like who's right and who's wrong. And really that moral authority, that moral compass can be built inside of ourselves if we stop going outside of ourselves to find it. And we'll be able to have a greater, more powerful voice if we trust our own moral authority, rather than going back to Allison and how we started this episode, rather than relying on celebrities to tell us how we should navigate life.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to have to like listen back to this and ponder that. So that
Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Instagram, like and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.